Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Once again, this is Tawqir with ISGH, Islamic Society of Greater Houston. I hope everyone's doing well today. We are here with our weekly Muslim summer series that we have been doing in summer of 2021. This is presented by ISGH Imams and ISGH Outreach. Discussion with the youth. We've had a good discussion last Thursday at around 8:30, and we are continuing on the same discussion this week as well. And mashallah, once again in the studios, we have our esteemed youth, mashallah, from the community. We have on the top Sister Arush Mansoor. She is, mashallah, an active youth with both Brand Lane and Masjid al Sabirin and Maryam Masjid. And we also have Brother Amir, mashallah. Assalamu alaikum, Brother Amir. How are you doing?
Walaikum Assalam, I'm good.
MashaAllah, Jazakumullah khair. From Maryam Masjid, we have Brother Alian. He's also part of the Youth Council at Maryam Islamic Center. Assalamu alaikum, Brother Alian. How are you?
Walaikum Assalam, I'm good, Imam Sahib.
Barakallah, Jazakumullah khair. We also have Sister Elisa, mashallah. She is part of the Youth Council as well as the president of Dallas MSA, mashallah. And we will also be joining with our youth Imam, Sheikh Muhammad Al Faruqi, inshallah. And he will join us anytime soon. And the topic that we were discussing last week was sheltering and unsheltering or not sheltering to your children or to the youth, and to what extent should parents be sheltering their teenagers specifically, not children or kids. Of course, we're talking about children. We're talking about youth who are in middle school or high school or who are above 12. So that was the topic of discussion that we had, and we had to close it off because it was time for salah and we couldn't really continue much discussion on it. So inshallah, we're going to be continuing the same topic. Before I proceed, I want to just remind everyone that mashallah, support ISGH. This is forgive me, sister. Assalamu alaikum, Sister Arush and Sister Elisa. One of the comments says that I didn't give salam to both sisters present on call. I'm so sorry. If I have missed that out, forgive
No,
me.
you're good. Walaikum assalam.
How are you doing? Assalamu alaikum, Sister Elisa. Actually, actually, the reason being is no discrimination or anyone or is nothing. It's just that Amir and Alian both are my students, so I kind of pick on them every now and then, and I've taught them Quran. But when it comes to the sisters, I they're not my students in a way. I known them; they're part of the community. But both of these guys, they literally grew up, and I've seen them, mashallah. That's why every now and then you might notice that I try to pick on them as well, and they pick on me as well. So that's the reason. Other than that, there's no other reason. But thank you for pointing it out. Anything that you see, please feel free to point it out, and inshallah we will correct it right away. So make sure that those who are commenting, especially with your critical comments, make sure you like and share this free stream as well. And also, school started. I don't know if the school started in all of the counties, but definitely for many people, school started this week. How about you guys? Did you guys' school start this week? It varies. Sister, you're. Oh, okay. And which school you go to?
I go to Dulles. It's in Fort Bend, and it started yesterday. I think all schools in Fort Bend started yesterday.
MashaAllah. In Fort Bend? Oh, okay. But they're also in Fort Bend.
I'm in college now, man. College.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I start college right now too.
Oh, okay, mashallah.
Yeah, I think I'm the only high schooler. I'm a senior this year, so that's nice. But
MashaAllah. Oh, okay. And when does college start?
At the end of the month, basically.
At the end of
Yeah,
the
like
month.
last week of August.
Yeah.
MashaAllah, mashallah. And Sheikh Muhammad Faruqi, I see you keep commenting, but you're supposed to be in the stream over here. Please don't comment. You need to join the stream, inshallah, right away. We need you in here. And so, Jazakumullah khair. I think it's school starting for parents. Summer is almost over. I think for those who haven't started, by the end of the month, in about 2-3 weeks, everybody will be back to school and everything will be back to normal. Jazakumullah khair. So let us begin the discussion without taking too much time into introduction and get to the discussion, to the melting pot right away. The questions that were discussed last time, and I'm going to let Sister Elisa kind of pick up on these questions over here and kind of moderate, and inshallah I will be on the side and comment every now and then when I feel that the line is being crossed. I'm just kidding. Sure, the lines will be crossed, but yes, absolutely, let us begin. And we wanted to start with the sheltering and not sheltering kids. That's what was the discussion that we left last week.
Okay, inshallah, we'll try not to cross any lines, but okay, so we did talk a little bit about sheltering, and I know the parents continued it in their session. So what do you guys think, just generally, of what we talked about last time? Because I know we touched on quite a few things.
I think what most of us came to the conclusion about was that sheltering is good, but to an extent. So kind of like we were dangling in the middle.
Yeah, for sure. I think we kind of overused the word sheltering without really knowing what it meant. I know a lot of us, like, sheltering has such a negative connotation. Like, the idea is you're keeping them away, you're like trying to keep them from the rest of the world. But the reality is, I think the right way to think about it is maybe protecting the kids. And that's a lot of what I think Dr. Sheikh and the Imam was saying about trying to protect the kids from a lot of the bad influences. And he mentioned quite a few bad influences out in the world that we want to protect our kids from. And all of those are pretty valid. But I think in order to fully protect everyone, we need to empower them more than anything else. And I know something that the Imam said was comparing himself to like Alyan. But I think a big difference is, Alyan, you probably grew up with the internet. So I think you definitely had exposure. Can you talk a little bit about how you might be a little bit different from Imam in the way that you guys grew up?
Well, I'm Tokir, sorry. Imam Tokir is a little older, so I know the internet still doesn't come that new to him. But with the internet, you're just kind of exposed to a lot more, I guess you could say, different realms that you wouldn't be. Because I will, correct me if I'm wrong, without the internet, you kind of just learn from what the people around you, as in who are in your environment, taught you, and that's what you went with. But with the internet, we're exposed to people from all across the world. So we're bound to learn how different cultures, different ideologies think and operate, and how they differ between our own ideologies. And as for a child, especially, that might be a little confusing. You won't, and I kind of see that right now, how I feel like a lot of us are just kind of lost in how do we place our own ideologies? How do we create our own ideologies in a world where everyone's ideologies are just thrown at you? And that's what the internet did from a young age to a lot of people.
Yeah, so correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the difference might be that although Imam grew up in a time where exposure was the people around him and exactly who he saw and like interacted with, our exposure was not limited only to that. It also included everything on the internet. And no matter what restrictions you placed on like screen time and the internet, you're going to get exposure to it. And I think everyone else kind of feels similarly. Like, Amir, have you had any experiences where you were like exposed to like ideology on like the internet, like Ayan was saying?
Quickly, can I, Sheikh Faruqi just joined in as well, so I just want to welcome. Assalamu alaikum, Sheikh, welcome.
عليكم السلام ورحمة الله وبركاته شيخ توقي حياك الله. I
Barakallah.
feel much better, by the way.
Jazakallah khair. I just wanted to make sure that he's in and he's part of the stream. So Sheikh Faruqi, Sister Elisa is going to lead the discussion, and we are just going to be assisting and listening, inshallah, listening in and learning and benefiting. And inshallah, if there's input needed, we will definitely take part on that, inshallah. Though I feel that I'm being spoken of as a third person, as if I'm not here. But okay. No, no, I'm just kidding. You're fine. You're fine. Okay, please
Yeah,
continue.
I was actually gonna say exactly that. You know, Sheikh Tawqir, he's not that old. Okay, we gotta chill out.
Okay, it's okay.
No,
At least,
Imam Tokir knows it's all love at the end of the day.
no, no. At least it won't be backbiting because I'm here. So,
Yeah, exactly.
all right. Okay, so go ahead, please, Amir.
Okay, so what I was gonna say was, so for Karthakir, when he was younger, like his influences were like like from the people around him, and then also for like me and Alyan, we're 19 years old. When we were younger, we had the internet, but we didn't have it like the internet now is way more prominent than it was like when me and Alyan were like 10 years old, 5 years old. So even back then, like our influences were still from like people around us, TV, but not necessarily like phones or anything because we didn't have like smartphones with us at all times. So I think for someone who's like 5 or 10 years old now in 2021, for those types of people, it's just going to be impossible to like shelter them because I mean you can like you can not give them a phone. You could try to limit them from doing things, but they're gonna be like exposed to that no matter what because like the internet is so prominent nowadays. And then like there's a lot of like fitna, a lot of problems happening nowadays that like if you when they grow up, when they go to school, they're gonna see that no matter what because it's just the normal. So that's why I think sheltering as like sheltering in the sense of like trying to make sure that they don't see any of that stuff at all is not the right way to go about it. The right way to go about it is by like the parents showing their kids like what's wrong, like showing them what's wrong and tell them why it's wrong, and then tell them the right way to do things. That's what I think.
Okay, so Imam Shah, let me ask you, what were the influences growing up? We kind of assumed a little bit, but did you have that much like access to the rest of the world like we do right now?
Thank you. Okay. No, I was born in Mecca and surrounded by prophets and messengers, and all day we used to just read the Quran and spend time in the masjid, and we did Hajj every day. There was no influences. It was just a pure environment, and we had no temptations. I was just like, Subhanallah. That's why, the way I am today.
You beat us all. You beat us all, Sheikh. You beat us all. There's no competition here.
No, just to clarify, yes, we grew up in a different time, and the youth are growing up in a different time. They have different temptations, and without a doubt, and I would also attest to that, that the temptations nowadays because of the internet is far more than it was when we were children and when we were going to middle school, high school. The society was not as open as it is today, and that was just a joke. Yes, we were sheltered much more, and there were not avenues for us to out there to be exposed to so many things, that I would have to give. Yes, yeah, there was not a lot of exposing to so many things that are out there today and that we see today, and that we come to hear of our youth and our children being exposed to. We've never had exposure to things like that. Yes, the temptations were different. I would say that we were more active, we were more physical, we were more outgoing, we were more social, we were less of um, I don't want to get into that, but we were less of
Sure.
not just sitting in the house and always glued to the screens. But Alhamdulillah, Sheikh Faruqi can probably, he has a little good mix. Maybe he can kind of add to it.
Jazakallah khair, Sheikh Tawqir, and subhanallah, and I think we mentioned the last time that this is such a great opportunity for all of us. But one thing that I do want to mention, Sayyidina Ali radiallahu anhu, he said that uh, live according to the time that practice your deen according to the time that you live in. And though from the surface of this saying, this quote, a lot of people can take it in the wrong way, but what I believe that Sayyidina Ali radiallahu anhu was, what he meant was that just like the times change, parenting techniques also change. And so the parents, but the values in parenting and the way a person parents, they're always going to be the same. you know Before telling your kids to do something yourself. And so when we talk about sheltering our children, um sheltering doesn't necessarily work the way we think it does. you know Back in the day, for us, sheltering was, what, the parents knew, who our friends were and who their parents were, right? Today, that's not how sheltering is going to work. So we're going to have to, kind of maneuver or twist the sheltering around the situation that our children face. And so I think that's a good way to look at it. I don't know if Sheikh Tawqir, he has a
No,
different
so
outlook, but
if I may pick up a question that comes to mind from here, and I want to ask the youth over here. Since in our time, just 10 years ago, you guys said that even 5-6 years apart, time changes, right? 10 years ago, there were not that many temptations out there, and we were not exposed to that many things. Yet we were sheltered by our parents on a different level. Today, there is more temptation. They are being exposed to more bad things. Shouldn't the sheltering be more compared to what the youth is saying? Less, right? That's a question to you. Because you guys yourself said that you are exposed and the temptations are different, and the internet, as Amir said, that we lived in the dark ages and he lived in the enlightenment ages with the internet. So you know, uh, so he's exposed to a lot of things. So shouldn't there be more sheltering from their parents? And
Okay, let's take this step by step unless anyone else wants to do it. So what I'm understanding is that in time before, there were temptations, maybe not as much as now. There are different temptations for sure now, but there were still some sort of sheltering then. And so, just to clarify, when you were growing up, did your parents shelter you, as in how did the sheltering work, or how did the protection work, in their words? Because is it the same as now? They obviously don't put screen time on your phones. They don't like ground you or anything like that. So what was the system of parenting that they used? Because I don't think we understand that like fully.
okay, so basically there was time, there was a curfew. We had to be home by Maghrib. We couldn't spend nights. We couldn't be playing all day outside because it was much more physical, right? After Asr or in the evening time, we would go play outside. So there was a curfew. There was limitations, even to friends. I would say that our parents were much more strict when it comes to our friends and hanging out and things that we would do at school. There was a lot of there was a lot of sheltering. I mean, these are some of the things that I can come up with. Other than that, I would not say that even when it comes to choosing, like, which school and which subjects and which periods and which things to participate in, it was not, it was just parents' decision. They would just decide for us, and then we would just do it, right? And one of the things that I mentioned to you that I don't know, for many, for you guys, mashallah, you guys are much more intellectual and mashallah, much more smart and know what to do in life and already figured everything out. But with us, I don't think I would have had been, maybe as where I am if it wasn't for my parents. If they had given me the option to choose between two things, I would have chose the easy one. I would have chose the easy path. I wouldn't be the one to be sitting in the masjid, right? I wouldn't be the one to go through something that's difficult or even challenging. I would have definitely chosen the easiest way out. But mashallah, you guys are very strong-willed.
What's it called? I like the way this person in the comments, Yasser, said awareness instead of sheltering, that's the right word to use. And that's actually what, when Imam Sabi had asked us, shouldn't we shelter more? It's not so much about the concept of sheltering, because you're bound to find out regardless. Like you're either gonna learn or you're gonna die. Like to me, it's that simple. Either you're gonna learn or you're gonna move out the way. But yeah, it's really just awareness. As in, how do you pass a test? You have to study that test in order to for you. I'm sorry, hold on, one second. In order for you to want your child to be successful, you have to understand and be aware of the time that they're living in. I guess it comes back to that thing that we call generational gap. Uh, Imam Fakir, there's been multiple times where me and you have had disagreements on generational gap, as in conflicting arguments about generational gap, but we still understand each other and respect each other. So I guess that's what I'm trying to come into is even if you can't comprehend, or sorry, no, even if not comprehend, even I'm losing my point. I'm sorry. Come back to me.
Okay, so Amir, go. What's your take on it?
Okay, so what Karthik here was saying about we should shelter kids more because there's more distractions. I think the thing is, it's not that there's more distractions, it's that the distractions are easier to come across now. Like there's always been like things that go against Islam. Like even in Karthikir's time, even in our time, even in the time right now, it's been the same thing over and over again. But the problem now is that it's just so like you have basically a computer in your pocket, you have your phone, and some of these kids are in like 5th grade, 4th grade, they got phones. Like they don't have any restrictions on them. They can see whatever they want to see. And then the problem is if their parents aren't explaining them what that stuff is, and then they find out from someone else who endorses that bad stuff, then that's just going to make them endorse the bad stuff. If a parent teaches that, if a parent showed like, I'm not saying just like show your kids drugs or anything, but like if a kid if a parent and a kid are like together, and then like that topic comes across, the parent shouldn't just brush that topic away and just like ignore it and just say like no, don't worry about that, because then that kid is going to find out later in life, and then if they're finding out in a wrong way, then they're gonna do that stuff as well. But if the parent tells them why it's wrong, then it'll be a better chance for them not to go on the right path, you know?
I do have
Exactly.
a
I want
follow-up.
to, Sheikh Taqir, just 1 second. That's exactly, subhanallah. And my father, rahimahullah, he stressed at this point so very much that most of the things that I see now that are happening now with the younger generation, and most of the stuff that I saw outside of my house, right? Because obviously I grew up in a very religious environment at home, and so my father, he made sure that he knew or he knew how to approach me with these topics. And just like Amir was saying, that it was easier for me, and it really is true that it was easier for me to adopt to what my father was saying and to understand why something that I saw outside of my house was wrong, because I understood why. Because my dad didn't just brush it off, but he explained to me what is wrong with this situation, what is wrong with a certain action, or what is wrong with a certain way people act, or the way people talk, for example. And so that's a very good point and a very valid point, I would say.
So I think having those conversations is a huge, huge thing that needs to be, I think, talked about more. Just generally having these heart to hearts with your parents, whether it's the parents starting off the conversation and giving us a space to talk. Because sometimes the parents know that we need a space to talk about these sorts of issues, but they don't know what the issues are, or what exposure we have at school, or what we've seen on the internet, or like what ads are everywhere. And so I think a huge thing is us, both sides, kind of starting that conversation and us making sure that we know what that's about. And so, Arush, do you guys have anything, or Imam?
Sure, I do have a follow-up question, but I'll go after Arush's feedback on this.
So I really like that Amir brought up that topic, because I think it's really not really about sheltering, but awareness about like how you learn about things. So instead of learning it from like social media or outside, you have somebody to give you good reasons and good explanations. And I think what Aliana was trying to say, the generational gap, it's that the way that our parents raised them is not the same way that our parents can raise us. because they lived in a different time. Even if it was just 20, 30 years ago, the way that they were brought up was in a completely different country, environment, and everything was very different back then. And so now the way we're being brought up, I think that you need to kind of like think differently, or like not shelter differently. The meaning of sheltering becomes completely different because we're living in a different world. So I don't know if like somebody else can explain that further, but that's what I'm trying to get at.
I think awareness was a good word, but I think an even more comprehensive thing is just empowerment. Like having those tools to be able to be in the real world. Because no matter how sheltered you are, or like how much we protect our children, no matter how many things we put on their phones, how carefully we pick their friends and their environments, they're going to get exposure either through the people around them or somewhere else or the internet. Or what tends to happen is people who over shelter their kids, the children turn into opportunists. They'll scramble for freedom at whatever cost, and that's not what we want. We want them to be empowered and aware of their environment. So Imam, do you have something to say about that with a follow-up question or anything?
Absolutely, I do. I do have a lot to say, and I'm going to say that what is the big deal with sheltering, right? What? Okay, yeah, I feel that, mashallah, you guys are picking up on this word. I absolutely think the word shelter and sheltering is absolutely fine. What's wrong with it? Okay, we were sheltered more, but when it comes to the generation today, they're far more coming to the masjid. The youth, they're not as sheltered. They have much more freedom. They have access to many more things. So tell me the percentage of youth that are on the right path, that are coming to the masjid. You guys sitting over here, you guys were somewhat sheltered with your parents, and that's why, alhamdulillah. But how many youth are coming? Tell me how many youth are engaged. Come, if you were to give me a percentage of 1 to 10, how many are exposed to drugs? How many are exposed to dating? How many exposed to? So yeah, I think that your children should be sheltered. They should be, if they are human beings, they're just getting mature and their bodies are developing. They are just picking up on new. Their bodies are learning. They're taking interest on the other gender, and if you completely let them loose and do not shelter them, they're gonna go away. And if you pick up the facts and figures, everything is out there. Like, yes, okay, the children, and yes, I know that when it comes to parents and the society, we've become really soft in a lot of these issues. But the ratio of the youth being in the masjid today is far less. We were not exposed to drugs. There was no dating. There was no clubbing. There was no all kinds of things because of the restrictions or the sheltering that our parents had. I'm going to ask you, how many times were you exposed to all of these things, to drugs, to clubs, to drinking, to socializing, to even smoking and all of that stuff? Yes, because you feel that, and we feel that we should not be sheltered. I would rather shelter my kids from all of those things and not get them involved into all of these. I think 9 or 8 out of every youth today has probably gotten involved with drugs or something that is detrimental to their to their upbringing. Now, if you were to tell me otherwise, please feel free.
No, you're right. I think probably like 8 out of 10 have been exposed to either dating, gender relations, drugs, whatever. Even if they don't directly do it, they've definitely been exposed to it. But I think that sheltering is not the solution. But I mean, a lot of people shelter their kids, but what if they grow up and then they're out of the sheltering and they go participate in that because they think they've been missing out? I think that what needs to happen is they need to understand why. So like if your parents explain to you properly why you can't do this stuff as a Muslim, and you understand like in your heart why, then you won't even have an interest in doing it, even if you were exposed to it.
I think Arush hit it right on the nail. They need to internalize and understand why those things are wrong. Because again, the exposure is
Here's the thing. Children are easily vulnerable to all of these temptations compared to when you are mature, you are able to make rational decisions. I feel at an age of youth, between the age of 13 all the way up until 25, 26, you are easily tempted, you are easily influenced. Peer pressure is a big thing. And yes, once you grow up, then you are exposed to those things. You have your own mind. You can differentiate between right and wrong. If you see something that's destructive, you are mature and your mind is mature, and you would not fall into that. Compared to if you do not shelter your kids at that age, they're easy going to go into it and they may develop habits that may stay with them for the rest of their lives. Yes, so in my opinion, yes, they will be exposed to it, but now they're mature, they're adults, right? Even when it comes to living in the United States, the laws under 18, you cannot do something on your own. You need parents' consent, right? Similarly, even when it comes to Islam, when you are mature and adult, your decisions are of your own because you are mature. You won't make the same mistakes. You're not easily tempted. That's just my take on this.
Yeah, no, I agree that you need to be sheltered at a young age, but I just mean that in addition to that, we need to understand why we're being sheltered and the reason behind it, so that like internally we know why and we don't even like want to do that.
I turned one on my side.
I think. Okay, Amir, go ahead.
No, Karthik, she's not on your side. First
She's
of all,
not.
what you've been saying,
You don't need to speak for other people, bro.
that's what you did. But what you've been saying is you should like shelter them, and then when they're older they'll understand. But if you shelter them and don't explain to them what's the like what's wrong with it and what you're supposed to do instead of that as the right way to do things, then when they grow older and then they have their freedom, they're just going to do the wrong thing because that's what they've been waiting for. If you don't explain to them what's wrong, or if you don't explain to them what's wrong with that, why we can't do that kind of stuff, and then if you don't give them an alternative, like let's say instead of dating, like you get married the halal way. If you don't explain to them what's wrong with dating and what's good about getting married the halal way, then they're just gonna go straight to dating whenever when parents are out of their sight.
Yeah, no, I agree with the dating thing because a lot of parents, like, they won't explain to you why that's wrong. They'll just be like, you can't do it, you can't talk to boys, you can't do anything. And then I guarantee you that 90% of them have done something with a guy or like dated a guy or whatever behind their parents' back without anybody knowing, because they internally don't think that it's wrong because nobody told them why it's wrong. They just know
Yeah,
we're
the
not
approach
allowed
is
to.
wrong. No, the approach is wrong, right? The parents should explain to them. But you're saying that they just because the parents did not let them, so behind their backs take away. Yes, there are some exceptional cases, but with most of the kids who are sheltered and who are raised in probably a strict environment come out far more better. In my opinion, if you don't let your shelter your kids and you let them loose, they won't even finish school. Forget college, getting a college degree, forget being protected from all of that. They won't even finish high school. It's because parents are going too easy on them.
Let
Okay,
me say
so
some more.
I think we might need
As
to clarify something.
please,
We all kind of established our own definition of sheltering, and we kind of moved away from that word into more of protection and empowering. And I think a huge thing that you're trying to get at is that your protection that you want to provide, inshallah, your kids is not so much of sheltering or protection, but safety. Is that true? Like a lot of what you're trying to get at is safety, because like a lot of the things I know you were saying earlier about your own, like how you were brought up, a lot of those are just really basic safety concerns, like your parents knowing who you're going out with. I think all of us can attest to that like I have to give my parents all of my friends' phone numbers and their parents' phone numbers, and I know some people do that as well, sometimes maybe not as strict as that, but a lot of these are just really, really basic safety concerns that should be universal. And
okay.
beyond that, I understand that there are extra levels of being strict and protecting your children and keeping them from that environment. But why don't we get Imam Farouqi's opinion on the exposure that all these children are getting? Because I understand and want to protect your child, but like Imam Farouqi was saying, just walking out on the street, you get so much exposure from all the ads that are everywhere, or the people that you'll just see walking across the street, like on the way to the masjid, the people that you'll pass.
Nobody passes drugs to you walking on the street. Nobody shows you inappropriate pictures walking on the street. I know that it may seem to you very basic stuff, but that's your opinion. And I think that's a good opinion, and I don't disagree with that. But I also feel that those are not basics. It is the parents' responsibility to protect their children. Yes, you may look at it protection from physical harm, but I'm talking about protection from spiritual things that destroys their mind and the heart. I, in my opinion, yes, the approach that was back 10, 15, 20 years ago, the approach was that parents were strict, and most of the kids turned out pretty good. Today, if you take out the ratio of the youth 10, 15 years ago and the ratio of the youth being raised today with less sheltering and less protection, I think, in my opinion, the youth of the 2020 or this new era are in a better position or a worse position.
I don't think you can really compare apples and oranges. We are a different generation and we are different individuals. So why don't we get Imam Faruqi's opinion? I know he might be some sort of a middleman. He's also an imam. He grew up in a very religious atmosphere. He might have grown up around similar things. He grew up around the internet to some degree. He grew up around different influences. So why don't you shed some light on this?
So, I mean, hey, nobody said that we can walk out in the street, okay? First of all. Secondly,
That's not what I'm referring
secondly,
to.
Man, these
yeah,
guys
yeah.
like you walking out the street and people are gonna rob you and give you
I was going
drugs.
off of Imam
Even
Faruqi's
walking out on the
example. He
street
was
is
saying
Look, all I'm gonna
dangerous.
say is,
My God,
all I'm gonna say
man.
is, I remember when I was in middle school, I got introduced to cigarettes. I didn't smoke it, but I was walking home from school and I got offered cigarettes. I'm just
And
saying
nobody saw
that
you.
does
Nobody
happen.
saw
also,
you.
we were
Nobody
That's
saw you,
walking
how-
in New
Alian.
York and
Nobody
everything,
saw
and
you.
there were just big drug carts and everything, and they were offering it to us as a family. My mom was wearing a hijab, and they're like, "Hey, you guys want some like pot brownies?" Like it was not. There are influences, and I'm sure it's not that extreme. But I was mostly drawing from Imam Faruqi's example when he was talking about his dad explaining to him things that you normally see on the street that have become normal that we might have to internalize and discuss. That is exactly what I was referring to. Not maybe as extreme as the examples I gave in Alian's examples.
Yeah.
Just clearing
No,
that up.
I didn't. Yeah, no, hayakillah. I totally get that. And I don't think that Imam Taqir was. I don't think he was trying to say that parents should not explain to their kids. But what I think he was trying to say was, and Sheikh Taqir, you can correct me if I'm wrong. But what I think Sheikh Taqir was trying to say was that, but even when we do explain it to our children, there are certain limitations and there are certain barriers of haya, and that is more important than just blatantly laying out everything. You understand? And either way, our conversation is still up to the point where we're saying, you know what, it is a both party effort. It is not a one single party effort, right? Parenting, it is a back and forth job, right? Sheikh Toqir, you have children, and I think you can agree to this, that parenting is a two-way street. you know Not everything cannot be from the parent side, because the parents have to provide for you, the parents have to look out for you. On the other hand, you have to be able to approach your parents, and sometimes you may feel like your parents are not approachable, right? But you can be a little patient, and you can approach them at a different time, right? They have more, more stresses of this life that they need to worry about, as well as you, right? And so I don't think Sheikh Tokir was saying, you know what, just don't say anything to them and just keep them under the sheets, right? Have them live under a rock, because that is not the correct way to do parenting. And Sheikh Tokir knows that better than me, you know? And so the haya, and I don't want to say this out loud, and it's not, but the thing is a lot of times, myself as an imam, I have to, kind of point things out to a parent, that, what, sister or brother so and so, that, the way that, your child was dressed today was improper. And I'm talking about little kids. I'm not talking about, older sisters and older women. I'm talking about little kids, because the tarbiyah, as Sheikh Taqir was saying, right? The heart and the mind, the soul, right? Everything, all of that starts when you are a kid. Okay, all of that starts when you are a kid. And so, while the parents are going to explain to you that this is wrong and this is why it is wrong, right? They also have to have certain barriers between, for example, and I'm going to use quote unquote the talk, right? The talk, and you guys know what that means, right? But You can't just have, if you have younger siblings, that's why I'm using this example, that if you have younger siblings, your parents just can't sit in front of them and just talk about all of that in front of your younger siblings, right? There are barriers of haya, there are barriers of shame. The Prophet ﷺ said that every deen has a characteristic, and the characteristic of Islam is haya, meaning that the Prophet ﷺ is highlighting haya most importantly, right? And then through haya, you do the tarbiyah for the children, right? You protect their hearts, you protect their souls, or you teach them how to do that. And so I think that's what Sheikh Tawqir was trying to say.
No, Jazakallah khair. Also, I just want to make sure that some of the sisters and the brothers who are watching are also commenting. Thank you so much. We hear you. We are. Are you guys all able to see the comments on Facebook that we're receiving? Right. I think we are receiving most of them on Facebook. The sister said, I have few friends who came from Saudi where everyone's very force sheltered due to government, and I feel like they are the worst. Yeah, that's a good point, sister. But I would say that I know a lot of people who are from Saudi or from extinct, and they came out very good. So one or two examples here and there doesn't make a difference. I actually know a lot of people who came and they came out very good. So it could be said both ways, and yes, to your point that the parents should be friend to their children. Yeah, I mean, I don't think that's something that's a very good point. All the points that everybody's sharing are very good. But I also feel that somehow you guys are trying to downplay the word shelter and remove it out of the dictionary and replace it with awareness. And maybe you feel that awareness or empowerment is more empowering and more holistic, whereas I think the shelter is okay. There's nothing wrong with that. Our kids should be sheltered. Protection is necessary, and awareness is something different. Empowerment is something different. Shelter is also something different, also very important. So yeah, interestingly, with the exception of few parents, most of the parents I speak to, and we had a discussion last week with the parents as well. Parents were all in agreement. Was like, yes, we should shelter our kids. Children, and the youth on the other end are saying, no, we should not be sheltering our kids. So who knows better, right? So most of the parents that we had a discussion with, they all were saying that yes, sheltering is important, and we should, and that's parents' responsibility to shelter your kids, to protect your kids, not just from the physical harm, but even from evil harm, right?
You do agree with the point that I made, though, Sheikh Tawqir, right?
Yeah, absolutely, Sheikh. I do agree with your point. I agree with all of their points. Well, Brother Amir asked this question: what does haya mean exactly? And those who are watching, please feel free to comment. We'll try to get to your questions as well, inshallah. We do have only 10 minutes left to this stream, so we're going to finish at 9:30 as well.
Wait,
I
so
think I think our discussion will continue into the few next coming months, so I think we should take it slow. Let's explain what haya is. Sheikh Tawqir, you want to go first, or Amir, if you want to explain what haya
No, no,
means from
no,
your
Sheikh.
perspective, please.
No, please, you can go ahead, Sheikh. Please.
Amir, go ahead. You were trying to speak, please.
no, they're giving the adhan right now, so I'm gonna mute my mic.
Okay.
Okay, so haya, and interestingly, recently we did not a seminar, but I'd say we did a small family night thing in the gathering. We spoke about haya, right? And haya basically, haya can be implemented through action. Haya, and I mean, it can be, uh, how do I say that? Haya can be transmitted through action, but more importantly, haya is the condition of a person's heart, right? How much shame he feels in his heart, right? Haya is basically knowing that even though the condition of your heart is clear in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? You have trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that the bad parts of you are not to be exposed in front of people. So you try your best to not do those actions and not cross the barrier or the boundary that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has set. That is haya. I hope I hope that answers the question. But very shortly, that is what haya is.
Okay, so just to adjust a couple of things. I know Imam Takir Shah mentioned something about our language that we started using, and we started drifting away from the word shelter, and that's mostly because we all kind of agreed it had a negative connotation. It's never been used positively around us, so we prefer the word protection. And then in response to Imam Faruqi, so we all agree on protection being a good word, right? A good solid word. And then empowerment kind of goes with it. Empowerment is more of what we were talking about with Imam Faruqi to uphold our haya. Those are all, I think, in my interpretation, correct me if I'm wrong, is mostly our own choices and things that we do. And so again, the way we dress, the way we act, I think those are all a lot based off of our own choices. And a huge part of that is what our parents teach us. And of course, our influences also have an effect on that and everything. But I think that's where the empowerment thing comes in. If our parents help us internalize why these things are right, it'll help us to maintain our haya and be able to do those things. I think what we were really trying to address with the whole protection thing is the power of outside influences and how they can really affect a person. And I think, does anyone else like want to help me summarize all of our thoughts? Because I think for the most part, us youth are on the same page. And then Imam Farooqi seems like a good middle person for us to all communicate and understand each other.
And what? I'm on the other spectrum of the universe?
We'll come into a conclusion. We're all understanding each other. It's a good thing. We want to hear all these other perspectives.
Okay.
We need to.
Okay, so I think that so we have two different viewpoints right now where Qari Taqir thinks that sheltering is like the way to go, and then
Let's
the
use
rest of us.
protection. Let's use like excessive protection or very strict parenting.
Well, Qari Taqir likes the word sheltering. Like he has no problem with that word. I mean, I don't have a problem with that word either. But I think yeah, you should shelter. Like I've been saying, like I've been kind of against it, but like obviously you shouldn't show a 5-year-old drugs. Like that's kind of like in that case sheltering works. But I think that the best way to go about it is like not just sheltering, like the way to parent. I mean, obviously Karthikir has more like validation than I do because I'm not even a father or anything. But I think the best way to go about it is not just to like shelter them, but for them to gain an understanding, to teach them like what's right and what's wrong, so that they have an understanding, so that they later could, when they're by themselves, they can just they can be fine. They don't need you to protect them. If I think it's like a steady process. If you're like, there's gonna be fitna all around us, like throughout our lives. If you teach your kids properly, not just shelter them, but like tell them what's wrong, what's right, and like explain to them like the reasoning behind stuff, then that'll make it. They'll be better Muslims in the end, inshallah. That's what I think.
Good. Can I just quickly add some, just a counter to Amir, mashallah, he good. So you said that, sheltering means like, doesn't mean you give her drugs to a 5-year-old kid. So what, is it okay to gift it to a 15-year-old kid?
No. I think.
Please clarify.
Okay. So when we say no sheltering, we're trying to say like we're not saying like let me bring up dating. So if we're saying we're not sheltering people from dating, we're not saying that we're letting them date. I'm still like, if I'm a father, I'm not gonna hide what dating is, but I'm not gonna tell them to date. I'm gonna tell them do not date, but I'm gonna explain to them why you can't. That's the thing. Like if you shelter them and hide everything, don't even like bring up the topics, that's just gonna like it's not gonna end well, because they're eventually gonna find out what that stuff is. And I'd rather have them find out from me and have me explain to them why it's wrong and what's the alternative, than to just hide it completely and then wait for them to grow older and then hear for the first time, because then they're not gonna have that understanding. You want them to have the understanding. So yeah.
Okay.
I don't look to a point, and I'm gonna. Okay, now I'm on the side of the universe with Sheikh Tawqif. Okay, to a point. Okay, to a point, I agree. I agree with. Again, to a point, I agree with what Amir is saying. But look, there's certain things that you have to learn on your own. Okay, there are certain things that you have to learn on your own, and you cannot dismiss that. As parents, your primary responsibility is to teach your children what they should know, not all the miscellaneous things that are surrounding life, right? You teach them, okay, look, drugs are wrong because so and so. You teach them, you know what, relationships before marriage are wrong and haram because of so and so, right? You don't need to step another step further and just jump the boundaries and run your horse across the universe, right? That's what I think. That's what Sheikh Tawqir was trying to say. And if not, then I mean, if not, if that's not what you guys wanted to hear, then I'm on the side with Sheikh Tawqir.
Okay, I don't really understand what you mean by that. Can you explain it a little bit more? Because it all kind of sounds very similar. It sounds like everyone's just saying that there's a very okay. Let me explain what I'm hearing from everyone because it all sounds like we're mimicking each other. There is a standard of safety and protection. That's just basic. Do not drop your child in a bad area. Like, don't let them stay alone. There's basic standards of safety and protection that are universal. And then beyond that, there is a part of us where we are trying to instill values. And part of that is like we give them a good environment. We take them to the masjid because as parents, you are able to take your child to the masjid with you and invite them to all these things and like events like these. And a part of that is also instilling values and having the conversations, empowering them, like we said earlier. So I think what Imam Faruqi was saying was you have these conversations, don't do drugs, don't do this. You instill Islamic values, but you can't say every single little thing, which is why you say the values and you help them internalize the basic core values about hayat, about everything generally. And it's up to them to eventually apply it in every situation. You can't tell them every single situation. That's just common knowledge.
So if you are
And
saying that we are mimicking and it's the same thing that we are all saying, then what's wrong with saying that it's okay to shelter our kids, other than the negative connotation that you've mentioned that maybe one person or two person have a bad, I guess, a negative meaning to it. Maybe they were sheltered too much. Their sheltering was to a point that it was too strict environment and they were beaten. I don't know, whatever they went through. Now, what sheltering? I'm not saying sheltering means that you are super strict and you beat your children, and if they're caught with something, you smack. That's not what sheltering is, right? Sheltering is simply protecting your children from all of that, right? So if you're also saying, then what's the big deal? Sheltering is good.
I think that's exactly what I'm trying to say, that we're all kind of saying similar things. There's very slight differences.
I would
because
like you to say it. Sheltering is good.
protection is universal and a good thing. I totally agree with shelter. But I think, Imam, you might be a little bit more strict because you are an actual parent. Like Arush, because of course you have the experience and you obviously care for your children a lot. And that involves wanting to protect them from all of the world, which is why you are saying all these like things. And of course, we want to protect our children from the world, but we're just giving the perspective that the exposure is real. And we, despite putting them maybe in an Islamic school or maybe putting them in a really good environment, these exposures are going to get to us. And instead of constantly trying to put them in a box inside of a box inside of a box inside of a box, we should focus on empowering them and making sure they have the right values and maybe even some experiences that would help.
But what do you
I
mean,
would
Sister
rather
Elisa? What do
live
you
under
mean
a
by
rock, in a
empowerment?
box and under a stone than be exposed to having drugs and then to the ills of our society, right? I would rather live under a rock and inside a box or whatever than even then there are more chances that you will end up getting into drugs. There are more chances that you are fall because of your age as well, right? Because you are prone to temptations very easily compared to a person who's married or compared to a person who's mature or compared to a person who's already been through those temptations, right?
So my question to you, Imam,
Yes, ma'am.
is what happens when your child eventually leaves the house? Once they graduate high school and they eventually maybe want
Yes,
to go to
then
university, what happens?
absolutely. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala teaches us that when they have grown mature and when they've developed their own wings, they're able to fly on their own. They are rational. They're not young anymore. It's not their first time experiencing different things in life. Now they can make, and you raise them to a point that they are able to make those decisions and they know what is wrong. They're told that this is not wrong and they were protected this for their whole youth. They won't be easily tempted into those things. That's my opinion.
So I think
Exactly,
that
exactly.
everybody's
And
kind of
And
saying,
I agree. I agree with most of your points. It's not that, but it's just that I think it's important to have both sides of the spectrum. And I think that I'm the only one over here with as a parent and as a father. And most of you are, mashallah, young in your age. So it's good. It's a good, healthy discussion. And especially the comments that we're receiving are very good as well.
So Arush, take it away. I think
I was just going to say that I think everybody's kind of saying the same thing, that sheltering at a young age, making sure like we don't put the kids in a bad situation and this and that, and then we tell them why it's wrong. So then when they grow up and they're exposed to it, they know why, and they, without their parents' influence, decide not to do the wrong things because they don't want to. So that's what Imam Takir was saying too, right? And then that's what we're kind of saying.
Yeah, no. I don't think that's exactly what we were all saying. Now, I think in the beginning, so quick question. I think Sister Munazza and some of the comments that we're receiving on Facebook, they're saying, "Mashallah, very good comments." We're reading your comments. They said that it's important to talk to your kids and bring awareness. Okay, we talk to the kids and we bring awareness to them. We tell them that, listen, son, listen, daughter, listen, child, this is not good for you. After bringing awareness to them, should we still let them out in an environment where you know that they will potentially be exposed to those things, where they will potentially fall into that, even after you giving that awareness? Is that okay?
Well,
Imam,
no, I mean,
Or,
if you,
or you think that just because you gave them a prep talk, that they're able to make the right decision, let them out, go,
Imam, I think you're
right?
missing the point. I think
Oh, okay.
okay, I think we're all again mimicking each other. There's going to be that exposure. We need to give our kids those talks. And again, the pep talks can only do so much. We want them to internalize the ideas, but sometimes the words won't always go through. But even inside that box, inside of a box, inside of a box, I mean, we're going to have some exposure. And I think that's what a lot of people are saying. The kids, it's a different world out there. Even if you keep them inside, it's a different world in here too. And so when I know you said you'd let your kids out in university and by that time they'd be mature. And I mean, that's up to interpretation, but you said they'd have previous experiences to draw on. But what experiences would that be if you keep them from experiencing anything? And again, I think we might be a little bit confused on exactly what Imam might be talking about in terms of
I
what you're
just think that, I think that, mashallah, at the end of this stream, I've convinced all of you that sheltering is okay, and I think that.
Okay,
I,
I've had my time to think.
why not?
I've had my time to think and listen to what
Go
everyone
ahead,
has
take it
said.
away.
So look, no one is saying sheltering is a bad thing, it's a horrible thing. No one is saying that. At least I don't think anyone's saying that, nor am I ever intended
No,
to.
that's fine. I know you're not saying it now, but that's not what you guys were saying in the beginning.
But
After some discussion and me talking to you and explaining to you, I think you've changed your mind, all of you.
honestly, that is true. It does give me a new
Alhamdulillah. I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah, it does give me that perspective. I never thought about it in some ways that you explained, Imam Sab. But again, I just felt that whole point was missed. That I felt like the whole point was missed. That we're not trying to say.
What point was missed, Brother Alia?
As in, it's not. I don't think there's two different sides to this. I think it's more just. I don't think we both understand each other. Either side just understands each other. We're both misunderstanding each other. I think
Well, we're going to conclude this stream by the conclusion that we don't understand each other, and you're on a different planet and I'm on a different planet. Really?
Oh, this is what I mean. This is what I mean.
What do you mean we don't understand each other at all?
I'll call you after this, man.
We made quite a bit of progress. We made quite a bit of progress, and I think that's what we should leave off on. We'll, inshallah, continue this conversation.
Sister Elisa, inshallah, can you conclude it with just to summarize it, mashallah, and then we will conclude because we need to finish in a minute.
Sure. Okay. So,
thank you for all the comments.
A lot and made a lot of progress in trying to understand the different perspectives when it comes to protecting your child and sheltering and empowering your child. And I think something that we all somewhat agreed on is that there's a basic standard of safety and protection that all children need. But we are a little bit polarized on what it means to really shelter your child and what tactics parents should use in empowering your children and making sure that they're ready for the real world, or whether they should even go ahead and tackle the real world at all. But we'll be working on it, inshallah, in the next sessions and the next discussion, whenever that is, Thursday, or if we do a Friday one with the parents tomorrow, and we'll see where that takes us and understanding all the different ideas and perspectives.
Thank you so much, Jazakumullah khair, for your feedback and for your leading this, Sheikh Faruqi. Should we conclude over here, and anyone would like to make dua and conclude remarks, inshallah. Thank you, Sister Elisa. Hey, I mean, I know I pick on you guys all of, but mashallah, I have great respect for all of you, especially for your manners and your etiquettes and for putting up with, with all of us.
Thank you, Imam.
Thank you. Sheikh Faruqi, you want to conclude, inshallah? Oh.
I don't think his mic is working.
No worries. It's okay, inshallah. I'll just conclude over here. Jazakumullah khair, barakallah. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to accept our gathering. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make it beneficial for us. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to unite all of us in whatever, whatever we learn and we grow together as a community. And thank you for Sister Elisa, Sister Arush. Thank you, Amir. Thank you, Alian, Sheikh Faruqi. And for all of the comments that we are receiving on Facebook, we are reading all of them. Inshallah, we're going to continue to read all of them as well. It means a lot, your support, your mashallah, cooperation for this. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless all of you. Jazakumullah khair. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.